Distinguished senators, resume your seat, please.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, lead debate on a bill for an act to amend the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act to designate kidnapping as an act of terrorism and to prescribe the death penalty for such offenses and for related matters, 2025 SB 965. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to lead the debate on the general principles of the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Amendment Bill 2025. The bill seeks to amend the extant law to, among other things, designate kidnapping, hostage taking, and related offenses as acts of terrorism, and to prescribe death penalty for such offenses without option of fine or alternative sentence, among others. This bill was read for the first time on Thursday, 27th November 2025. And Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, may I also add that this bill is coming pursuant to the resolve of this 10th Senate and the 10th Assembly to join hands with Mr. President and other arms of government in bringing a lasting solution to the insecurity challenge that we are faced with as a country. 3 weeks ago, this hallowed chamber, the Senate held an executive session, and part of the resolutions at the executive session was that the office of the Senate leader should, without any delay, come up with a bill that will redesignate kidnapping as an act of terrorism, thereby attracting a death penalty. So this bill is part of the resolutions of the 10th Senate. This bill, the contemplation of this bill, Mr. President and my colleagues, is a direct response to one of the gravest security challenges threatening the lives, livelihoods, and future of our people. It is a known fact that in our country today, kidnapping has become one of the most pervasive and destructive crimes. What once started as isolated incidents have now escalated into a well-coordinated, commercialized, and highly militarized acts of violence perpetrated by organized criminal groups. So prevalent is the kidnapping situation that there is hardly any region of our country that no kidnapping cases are reported. This development has instilled widespread fear in communities, undermined national economic activities and agricultural output, interrupted children's education, bankrupted families due to payment of ransom, claimed countless innocent lives, as well as overstretched our security forces. The objectives of this bill, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, are threefold. One, it seeks to designate kidnapping and hostage taking as acts of terrorism. This classification will further empower our security agencies with broader operational authority, intelligence capabilities, and prosecutorial tools available under counter-terrorism law. Secondly, the bill seeks to prescribe death penalty without an option of fine or lesser sentence for kidnapping and hostage taking because of their catastrophic impact on national security and the well-being of the people. This stringent punishment is to serve as deterrence to perpetrators. Thirdly, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, the bill seeks to dismantle kidnapping networks by enabling stronger enforcement regime aimed at placing kidnapping under the terrorism framework, where relevant agencies can pursue asset tracing and forfeiture, intelligence-led operations, interagency coordination, swift pretrial procedures under terrorism laws, as well as disruption of funding and logistics chains. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, the pattern of organization, brutality, and destabilization association with kidnapping now carry all the characteristics of terrorism. Therefore, it is no longer feasible to treat these acts as ordinary criminal offenses. As such, the legal framework reflects the true magnitude of the threat. This will ultimately help to weaken the infrastructure that sustains kidnapping syndicates. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, by enacting this proposed legislation as an act of the National Assembly, we, as legislators, will be fulfilling our moral, constitutional, and legislative duties to protect the lives of Nigerians. And it will undoubtedly send a clear message that Nigeria no longer tolerates kidnapping as an enterprise or weapon of terror. On this note, I therefore respectfully urge my distinguished colleagues to support this bill, your bill, for second reading, and to allow it to proceed to the committee stage for further legislative refinement. I thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues.
Distinguished Senator Oshomole.
I rise to support in toto everything that the lead presenter of this bill has said. And the only thing I want to further emphasize is that this bill will also cure the mischief in the terrorist act, because we have seen in the distant past where terrorists apprehended who have killed, maimed, and committed heinous crimes were, in the name of de-radicalization, they were arrested, quote and unquote, de-radicalized, retrained, fed with taxpayers' money, and as we know now, some of these guys went back to continue with the acts of terrorism. So my understanding of this reinforcement of the Terrorism Act by including kidnapping is that such discretion will not be available to anyone, whether in the armed forces or even in the executive. Because we can't spend so much money, expend so much energy to apprehend very dangerous people who have killed, maimed, buried children alive, and in the air where they are apprehended, somebody come from somewhere and say, look, we need to use all sorts of jargons to justify why these guys should not face the wrath of the law, which is to face trial and if convicted, sentenced to death. Until people begin to see those who have killed, even in the Bible and the Holy Quran, he who kills has no right to life. And so I believe that by emphasizing this law in the manner that the leader of the Senate has very ably articulated all the elements of the law, that the message should be clear. Those discretions are withdrawn. No more de-radicalization. If you are caught after committing heinous crimes, the penalty is death if convicted. Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank the Senate leader for, very articulate presentation of what I believe is our collective feelings with regards to this issue of kidnapping and terrorism. Thank you, Mr. President.
President, my dear colleagues, Aliyu M. Wamako are my names, Sokoto North. Mr. President, I rise to support this motion ably moved by Senate leader, which is wonderfully presented and most timely presented. This motion, Mr. Speaker, cannot come at a better time than now when we're fighting left and right with the issue menace of voluntary terrorism and kidnapping in in our dear country. And as cultural lawmakers, this motion is, this bill is a contribution, is a big contribution from this chamber to the government's effort in curbing the menace of insecurity, banditry, and terrorism in this country. I therefore second the motion. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Distinguished Senator.
I represent Abia North. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, I'm not sure that this bill brought by the leader of the Senate was a bill agreed by all of us. All 109 senators agreed in a closed session that we must get this bill across and sent to Mr. President. Mr. President, I believe it's a high time. There's no town and villages that there are no kidnappers in Nigeria. So I believe this bill is apt, is a natural thing to do. And we will go, as my colleague Wabako said, we go for the informants, sponsors, people they use their houses to do this thing, including everybody involved, whether security agents, whether it's police, whether it's army, whether it's Navy, Air Force, or lawyer, anybody will be put in that bill. We have to reappraise this bill sent by a Senate leader and touch it up so that it will come to a real standard that will protect Nigerians. Nigerians have suffered in the hands of kidnappers. This must stop. I'm a Christian faith, but we don't support death penalty. But I support death penalty for this because people must stop harassing Nigerians. Young girls are raped, women are raped for no reason because they are kidnapped and money taken. People have gone bankrupt in their businesses. Mr. President, let me raise my case and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Well done.
Distinguished colleagues, I remain Abba Moro. Mr. President, I think quite frankly that this bill is a very straightforward bill. Apart from the content, it was a unanimous decision of the Senate that the Senate leader brings up this bill. And the intendment was very clear, that kidnapping must be properly designated, its consequences aptly identified, and punishments meted out appropriately. And so, Mr. President, I think that we should go ahead and allow for a second reading of this bill in the hope that a properly designated act of criminality with its concomitant punishment will act as a deterrent to the daily occurrence of kidnapping in our country. Particularly, Mr. President, this kidnapping has become a business. A business because negotiations are carried out, ransoms are paid, and so these perpetrators are emboldened by the financial benefits that accrue to their acts to continue to terrorize Nigerians. And of course, I hope very sincerely too that the foundation of this crime must be appropriately identified, even though I do not subscribe to the fact that because of certain conditions, certain persons will take laws into their hands and begin to perpetrate mayhem on the ordinary Nigerians who are also suffering the same environment. And so, Mr. President, I support this bill, and I hope that my colleagues in all will support the bill, and that justice will be done to the bill at the public hearing, and the bill passed into law to safeguard the lives and property of Nigerians. I so submit, Mr. President.
Senator Victor Ume, OFR, I represent Anambra Central Senatorial District. Mr. President, thank you for this opportunity to contribute to the debate on this bill. Kidnapping and the gruesome murders of victims that we have witnessed in this country will irritate every man of conscience to rise to support this bill. When you look at various cases of kidnapping where ransoms have been paid, running into tens, 20, and sometimes 100 million, these kidnappers to receive this money and still kill their victims. We have seen this a lot of times. Therefore, people who ply this trade deserve no mercy. What we have to do is to do everything to provide the law that will brand it act of terrorism, because it is act of terrorism. Their modus operandi does not differ from terrorism. While we make law that this shall be capital punishment for any offender or somebody who is arrested for it, Mr. President, we have to go deep to the people who facilitate these businesses. It's not only the kidnappers that carry gun, abduct their victims, that are involved in this business. Financial institutions also are part of it. Because it beats my imagination that people will pay ransom, 100 million naira, through financial payment platforms, and these monies will be received by the financial institutions, and they do not give any lead to the account owners through which these ransoms are received. Many people have gone through hell through this process. Therefore, as we go after the real kidnappers that have identified, we have to go after the financial institutions through which these ransoms are received. Anybody or financial institution that receives any money from a kidnapped victim must be held responsible for it. Because our law forbids banks to indulge in illicit financial transactions. So in passing this bill, maybe during public hearing, we have to identify appropriate punishment to any financial institution that will receive monies collected by kidnappers from their victims. Again, the other issue, Mr. President, that you touched, you said we should take during public hearing, is going after the sponsors. Mr. President, there's no difference between a sponsor and a kidnapper. They are all the same. So the law will take care of the sponsors and the kidnappers at the same time. Punishment will be the same, both for sponsors and the actual executors of this heinous crime against Nigerian citizens. So on this note, Mr. President, I do not need to belabor it. But what is important is also that in making this law, there must be the political will to implement the convictions handed down. Because people are convicted in this country and they are not executed for murder, for all kinds of things that take human life away. So somebody can go and kill somebody and believe that once he gets there, he can stay there for another 30 years. That is not the intent of this law. This law, when passed, shall be executed by those who are saddled with responsibilities by giving that authorization for the execution of people who are so convicted. So that the deterrence which we are pursuing through this law will become effective. Anybody who thinks that if I do this and I'm caught, I will be killed, will have to know that the price for this crime is also death. So by the time they lift their guns or whatever means to kill anybody, some people are strangled to death. Some people are strangled. So when they are got, they should know that the price is death and they cannot escape it. It's only when we begin to implement it according to the law that it will act as the deterrence for which this law is being made. I thank you, Mr. President, so that my colleagues will contribute. This is a terrible thing that we will never allow to happen to any person. We don't need to wish this thing to any person, because when you discuss with victims who manage to escape from captivity, you see that the people behind this business are animals. So on this note, Mr. President, I hold support. I do not want to belabor it anymore. Let it be. And any soul that sailed, it shall die. That's what the Bible says, according to Shomole. Any sin, any soul that sinneth, itself shall die. So when you kill, you should die. That is the compensation for killing another person. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm so happy that I've contributed.
Let me ask again. Is this anybody who is opposed to this bill? If there is nobody who is opposed to this bill, I just want to remind us that this was the resolution of the Nigerian Senate. So it's not really something we debate. It's something we fast track to go for public hearing and thereafter concurrence. Because in reality, everything you are saying here, you must say it at a public hearing and then panel beat it in order to suit the situation of today. The heading, you want to change it now, or?
This is a resolution
We haven't come.
of an executive session. Should read, sponsored by or pay me by Middle House and 108 others. That should be the heading.
That is carried. Clerk, note that 108 others. Because everything is pay me, so that is very correct. Distinguished colleagues, a bill for an act to amend the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act to designate kidnapping, hostage taking, and related offenses as acts of terrorism, to prescribe death penalty for such offenses without option of fine or alternative sentences, and for related matters 2025. Second reading taken. As a result of the importance of this bill is now committed to the committees on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters, National Security and Intelligence, the Committee on Interior, and the lead committee will be the Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters, to report back to the Senate within 2 weeks. I hope 2 weeks is good enough, within 2 weeks. I want to thank distinguished colleagues for sticking by their resolution. That there is no straightforward way of fighting these acts of kidnapping and terrorism in our country. We have to show resoluteness, we have to show seriousness. And I do know that once we make this law and it's signed into an act of parliament, it will, of course, override every other thing that is being done in all states of the Federation, because any act that is made by the National Assembly takes precedence over state laws. And as stated in our Constitution, any provision that is in conflict with the federal provision, that provision becomes null and void to the extent of the inconsistency. So for us, this is national, and we have to protect our country. We have to protect the future Nigerians. Otherwise, people will mistake being a medical doctor, being a lawyer, being a parliamentarian to being a kidnapper, because it's almost becoming like a profession. So I want to thank all my colleagues and urge that the committees involved should meet immediately and then take the views from the public and revert to us within 2 weeks because of the seriousness of the occasion. I thank you all. Yes, Senator Goje.